nominal.
The chamber pressure looks good.
Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting outside feed off. Bring in SC off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks. If you're following the NASA Spaceflight channel here, you know that the song means that it's time for another live stream. John Galloway for NASA Spaceflight here, standing by at Slick 4E out at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Somebody's going to make the West Coast, Best Coast joke here, so I'm just going to beat them to the punch. But we are standing by for a launch of a Falcon 9. With SpaceX with some internet satellites, 50 Starlink satellites on top of the rocket here today, and the NASA Spaceflight team is ready to bring you coverage of the launch from Vandenberg. Coming up quickly here in about 22 minutes. So we are starting hot. If you've got questions for us, same as always, tag us in chat. Y'all know the drill here. Also, we'll be reading super chats and things like that. There are no 4 white towers. Let's get that out of the way as well. And let's also introduce the other people who are going to be on the stream with us today, starting with Mr. Chris Gebhardt. Chris, how are you doing?
I am doing just fine. How about you?
I'm doing good, Chris. Of course, Chris is the associate assistant managing editor to the managing editor or something like that. Assistant managing editor. And he'll be answering some of the questions today. You've heard his name and his voice on the stream before. Also joining us today, helping with some of the questions, we've got Mr. Stephen Marr. Steve, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. Just over here riding the pine on the sidelines while Jack and Pauline have all the fun out there in Vandenberg.
Did you say riding the pine?
Yeah, you know, like bench warmer, you know,
Okay.
sit on the sidelines, you know.
I'd never heard that before, but it made sense when you said it out loud. Okay.
Ride the pine.
Also, folks, out in the field today, we've got a couple people. You may have heard from them yesterday out from the Strato launch, Flight 4 of the Rock. But Mr. Jack Beyer, on a few hours of sleep, also made it out to Vandenberg. We're looking at Jack's camera right now. I think we have Jack on comms.
Heyo. A few hours of sleep is right.
There you
but
go.
I'm here, and it's a clear day. I don't want to jinx it, but I don't see any fog in the near vicinity, and we're like 20 minutes from launch. So I think it's safe to say it's a clear day here at Vandenberg, which is always a good thing. I will happily lose sleep for a clear launch day.
Well, I hope the Marine layer is not watching the stream and just listened to you say that, Jack. So Jack has rolled out. Also, we've got Pauline Ackelin out as well. Let's switch over to Pauline's camera here. She has a different angle, a little bit of a long-range camera, but massive thanks to both Jack and Pauline for rolling out today. Chat, y'all keep showing up to view the streams, and we will keep rolling out to cover them for you. We appreciate everybody for making this happen today. So let's talk a little bit about the mission, and I'm going to kick it over to, well, Chris. How's that?
Yeah. So this is the Starlink 4-11 mission. The 4 indicates the orbital shell that it is going into, and 11 sort of indicates the original number that it was planned in. And before we continue on with that, we're going to note a major milestone in the countdown that is occurring right now. This is the vent at T-minus 20 minutes. So what this signifies right now is that RP1 kerosene load into the second stage has been completed. The transporter erector propellant lines are being purged in preparation for the transition to liquid oxygen fill of the second stage. And they are also taking this time to vent out some of the some of the gaseous oxygen that is boiled off in the first stage so far to help maintain tank pressures in that stage. Right now, too, the first stage is being loaded simultaneously with liquid oxygen and liquid kerosene. So that's what's happening right now ahead of the launch of 50 new Starlink satellites into the 52.3 degree inclination orbital shell that that SpaceX has been filling out ever since they completed the first orbital shell last year. And as always, if you have a question, tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight and ask that question. That helps us see it and add it into our question queue. And we definitely already have some coming in. Johnny E., thank you so much for becoming a new Capcom member. And Kai, thank you so much for becoming a Padrat member. Thank you much. Ron Smith with a super chat saying the NSF team deserves kudos, but Jack is a mad lad for going to Mojave, editing videos, and then going to the launch. It has certainly been busy out on the West Coast, hasn't it, Jack?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. This has been quite a couple days, but I'm happy for the activity, so no worries there. Also, well, no, go ahead, keep going.
Okay, all right. And Mike Smith with the super chat asking, what would those 4 missing white towers be if they were there? Okay, let's not talk about it.
That's nice. That's good.
But this is sort of, for anyone who is new to a Vandenberg mission, there is a difference. And what we are talking about here, the missing towers that they're talking about are not actually missing. What they're referencing here is a difference between the Florida launch sites and the California launch sites. So in Florida,
the California ones are better.
So says you.
So in Florida, you have afternoon thunderstorms, dynamic weather events, and you really need to protect the vehicle and the pad from lightning strikes. So there are lightning protection towers around the pads. But California weather is much more stable. If there's going to be instability like thunderstorms, you tend to be able to predict that in enough time ahead that you could bring the rocket back into the horizontal integration facility if you needed to. So you don't really, and plus the terrain differences in the mountains, you don't end up needing the lightning protection towers at Vandenberg like you do at Florida. So that is why we don't see them.
There's also a lot of terrain that is higher than the rocket itself. So,
Exactly.
path of least resistance is perhaps not always going to be the rocket. But yet another thing that makes Slick 4 an awesome launch site is it doesn't have the 4 towers. So we don't have to answer that question, but we did anyways because we love you all.
Indeed, indeed. Which leaves the question from Musical Wolves, is that one white tower the one that's launching? And in this case, yes. So what you're looking at here, you can sort of see the grayish-white transporter erector in this particular view with the rocket sort of peeking out on the left-hand side and then the payload fairing peeking out up top. But that is what will go, the Falcon 9 is what will go to space, and that transporter erector, just like the ones in Florida, will remain here on the ground, but supports the rocket during its rollout and fueling operations.
And I saw another interesting question that's sort of related from Boca Chica Crane, which I think is interesting. The cranes are becoming sentient. I don't know if we should be concerned about that, but they're asking.
Yes, that's terrifying. We should be concerned about that.
Okay. Question is, what are the gazillion different micro towers to the right of the launch pad? That is an interesting question. What are all those little things over there? Do we even know?
Yeah. So these are going to be some of their propellant tanks, some of their communication and frequency towers, and everything over on that side. So those are what you're seeing.
Cool.
They're hard to see too from this angle, but at the base of the pad there are several large, I don't know if they call them rainbirds here. I know they call them rainbirds at the Cape out there. But that's like part of the water deluge system as well. So some of those pointy bits closer to the actual like base of the rocket itself could be part of the water deluge system. And
it's worth noting this is the 4th launch for this particular booster. This is booster 1063. Its first launch was the Sentinel
6A.
Yeah, there you go.
It was
Yeah,
Sentinel
that's right.
6A with Michael Freilich on behalf of NASA and the European Space Agency. In particular, it's booster 1063. And then after the Sentinel 6A Michael Freilich mission, it came to Florida for a Starlink flight, and then back to Vandenberg, where it launched the Double Asteroid Redirect Test mission for NASA back in November.
And speaking of boosters, we over here on the East Coast at Port Canaveral, we just had booster 1058 return to the port. And I believe, yes, we have a view of that. Just see, you can see the tugs are actually still just getting it, just birthing the drone ship. That's shortfall of gravitas there. And this has been a busy, busy booster. This was the 11th flight for this particular booster. The first of which, as a lot of you out there may remember, was for Demo 2, flying Bob and Doug for
Yeah.
SpaceX's first human flight.
Indeed, it was a booster with a lot of history, and I love when these sort of events overlap because it really sort of hammers home how busy the SpaceX manifest is, both with external and internal missions. Both of these in particular ones were, well, this was the Starlink booster, right, that launched on Monday and landed off the coast of the Bahamas. And now we see another Starlink mission on the other coast getting ready to go. And likewise, a drone ship that will be downrange for the Vandenberg one. The Vandenberg launch, which we are just under 13 minutes away from now, is aiming for a landing on, of course, I Still Love You, out in the Pacific Ocean.
Which
Right.
I love return to launch site landings. But when a booster comes in on a drone ship on the West Coast, I know I'm annoying. I say that I love the West Coast a lot, but I like where I live. When a booster comes into port here, you can get in such a cool spot that I'm super excited to have a booster coming on a barge again. And to your point, Chris, about the cadence here, we have a return booster on the left side and a launching booster on the right side, both for Starlink, because SpaceX is just steamrolling this year. I just wanted to say we got a Capcom member at the start of the stream, and thank you to all of our members for letting us do what we do and being able to do coast-to-coast coverage of stuff like this. It's a really cool shot that we have on screen right now, a shot from Florida and a shot from California. And have both of these boosters launched from both coasts?
I know 1063 has. I believe it was its second flight that it flew out of Slick 40 here at the Cape. 1058, I will need some help. I could probably figure that out.
We have coast-to-coast boosters and coast-to-coast broadcasts, and thank you to all of our members for doing that, because couldn't do what we do without you. Thanks, members. All right, I'm done.
And and another thing that the members allow us to do, speaking of how busy everything is, SpaceX and everybody, you may have noticed we've started taking these flyover videos over the Cape. And we're super excited. I'm personally excited because that means I get to fly around in a helicopter, and I love that. So a big thanks to our members, because without you, we would not be able to do that. But I really hope you guys enjoyed that first video that we put out last week. We have another one coming. Should be out later today, so keep your eyes peeled. It's really good. There have been changes. So the big question is, well, how much is going to change out there from week to week? There are changes. We captured a lot of them, and we are super excited to show those to you.
Indeed, we are. Indeed, we are. Lots of really cool changes that are coming. Really good. And to answer the question about the booster that is returning to Port Canaveral here, it has only launched from Florida.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was gonna do my quick Google trick. I usually I have a go-to look for where and when and what missions each booster has launched.
Indeed. Any other questions we got here, Stephen?
Yeah, actually, Peter Davis was wondering why 50 this time? Why 50 Starlink satellites on this one?
Yeah, so this all sort of comes down to mission dynamics and exactly where they're going, exactly where the drone ships have to be positioned, if they're going to do dogleg maneuvers, what kind of a dogleg maneuver is that? So you can get variations in how many they can launch into a particular inclination. When they sort of do these flights from Vandenberg and from Florida that have the dog legs, you have to reduce down the number of satellites because of their mass, right? Because you have to leave enough propellant in the first stage to return it to the drone ship. And that sort of leaves you with a set amount of propellant in the upper stage, and that tells you what your ultimate mass to orbit can be for that particular mission. So for this one, launching from Vandenberg today, with a downrange landing, but a bit of a dogleg maneuver to get to the 53.2 degree inclination orbit, they can put 50 on board.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me, there was a couple weeks there where we had several, or maybe it was just two, return to launch site landings. And when I was out at the beach in public areas, people would ask, "Well, how come they're doing more of those now?" The question from a lot of people is, why now? Why do they land on the drone ship? Why don't they just bring them all back? Well, it comes down to what's your payload, what's your orbit, what's the trajectory you have to fly to get there. Like you're saying, that dogleg maneuver burns a little extra fuel, so it's going to change your how many satellites you put on board. Sometimes you have the freedom to do that. With Starlink, they can just reduce the amount of Starlink satellites that are on there. With other payloads, like that payload mass is set, and that in conjunction with whatever orbit you're going to is going to determine whether you need a drone ship landing, how far the drone ship needs to be downrange, or if you can just do a return to launch site. And I would think, I feel pretty confident in saying that SpaceX would prefer just landing them all back on land, because then they're right there on the pad. They don't have to bring them back on the drone ship, and that takes extra time and maybe wear and tear just from the sloshing of the seas. But it all comes down to payload mass and orbit.
Indeed, it does. Indeed.
Yeah.
And hey,
and
as we continue here,
ahead.
just wanted to say a quick thank you to Mike Farrell for becoming a Red Team member, and also to Nodnas62 for becoming a Padrat member. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Michelle Pierce saying, afternoon, guys, get Jack a cup of coffee to keep him going. I think Jack will appreciate that.
Yeah.
DYU89 saying Space Force needs to fix their fog machine. No, I think it's functioning perfectly fine. We can see the rocket.
Yeah. And Mario over here in the at NASA spaceflight queue said all the fog is at Starbase.
Yes, all the fog is at Starbase. It is very foggy there today as well. But wanted to hit those thanks to everyone else. And Steven, do we have any more questions?
We absolutely do. Nathaniel Bells, or Bellis, says, has SpaceX announced any plans to add another launch to make up for the lost satellites in the recent launch? And also, that's a good point, is that the last one, and I wanted to ask, I was trying to figure it out before I got to this, but I know the last Starlink launch from the Cape, they went a little higher in their orbit because there was that geomagnetic storm.
Indeed, yeah. So, Stephen, I think what you're referring to is the Starlink 4-7 group, which launched in early February. After it got into orbit, there was a solar storm that erupted from the sun, came at us very quickly, and increased the density of Earth's lower atmosphere. They placed the Starlinks into safe mode, basically positioning them razor edge on to reduce drag. But the drag increase and atmospheric density increase was 50%, and there was just no way for most of them to survive. So to compensate for that, they have now started inserting them into slightly higher orbits. So instead of leaving the perigee at around 190 to 210 kilometers-ish, I think maybe they've gone up to 250, it is now a 306 perigee. In kilometers. So that will greatly help if that were to ever happen again.
Yeah, and it is an interesting lesson in the fact that the Earth's atmosphere is not a fixed thickness. It can swell and shrink depending on space weather, literally space weather.
Oh, yes, and the sun has a huge effect on that as well. So to answer the question, now that we've set the stage for it, they haven't announced it, but I also wouldn't expect them to announce it. They'll just be an extra one tagged on to the end, if that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. But not one that they would formally announce.
Right. They'll just continue launching satellites,
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. And I see we are 4.5 minutes away from liftoff, so the transporter erector will be pulling back here to about 77.5 degrees, much more than it does at the Florida launch sites, because it does operate a little bit differently out here. There isn't a real need to turn this one around as rapidly as the ones in Florida, so it doesn't do the big throwback maneuver at T0 and liftoff as the others do.
Kind of as a consequence too, when you get some remote photos or what have you of a Falcon 9 going out of here, you can often see part of the like feed lines kind of get roasted every time, and I'm sure they just throw a new feed line on the transporter erector there, and it's not a big deal, but it's kind of a fun thing to watch out for every launch. Like, oh, what kind of beating did the TE take on this one?
True.
And side note to the person who said, "Get me some coffee." Don't worry, I've had plenty.
I think Jack's starting to get excited if you can hear that in his voice. Even more excited than his baseline excitement state. Yes.
I just hope he's not getting too jittery now that he's going to have to track a rocket.
Oh God! Oh, good point. Because caffeine makes you shake.
Yeah. Let's see. We have another interesting question from Lena Wallenstein or Steen. What's better for launching a rocket? Liftoff from the top of a mountain or starting on sea level?
Well, mountain, to be fair, because the higher in elevation you get, the thinner the atmosphere. And that's a lot of what the first stage boosters of rockets have to do, is counter the really dense lower atmosphere before they can start to impart the necessary horizontal acceleration into the vehicle to obtain orbit. So the higher in altitude you go, the less work the booster has to do. So that's why you see some companies do airdrop launches, because if you can get the rocket up to 30, 40,000 feet and then drop it, you've eliminated a lot of that dense lower atmosphere that the booster has to counteract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
However, Vandenberg is not that high above sea level. So
no. Yeah, it's right by the coast.
Do you want me to zoom out and show you the sea? Because it's rather beautiful.
I'm sure it is, but at 2 minutes to go,
yeah, okay, there he goes.
I guess he's doing it.
There he goes.
But yes, and speaking of, you can see the rocket venting a little bit there. Final vents and purges of the transporter erector and the booster there before the T-minus 1 minute mark, where we will have the final pressurization of the first and second stage tanks for flight. Falcon 9 will go in. Falcon 9 will take control of the countdown. So the countdown has been automated, but the ground has been in control. So Falcon 9 will take control here in 30 seconds, and then we'll have the final go for launch from the launch director at the 45-second mark, followed by the anticipated liftoff here.
All right, so I think we'll chill
There's
on questions for now.
That's normal.
Yeah.
That is normal, but just to answer one quick question that is there in chat. So Jack is about 5 miles or so away from the pad here. So 5 miles or 8 kilometers, so a little bit farther than what you can get at Kennedy, but that is just because of the terrain at Vandenberg. So that is where Jack is located. And Pauline is a little bit farther away, but with a very different vantage point and tracking point, which will be nice today as well.
Yeah, she'll have that side view, I think, which I always love when we have a second camera down here on Cocoa Beach and they're launching south. I love that.
Exactly.
Bring up that rocket cam audio here. So we may hear some people
Indeed.
chatting on the side, but here we go.
Because we are under 30 seconds to go here to for the launch of the Starlink 4-11 mission with 50 new Starlink satellites headed for a 53.2 degree inclination orbit, launching here from Vandenberg. Here goes the final 10-ish seconds of the countdown. You can see the Rainbirds there, so engine start imminent. And we have a liftoff of the Falcon 9 on a Starlink mission from the west coast of the U.S. Wait for the sound, guys.
Coming across the valley right now, racing towards the microphone.
hear that mighty rumble of the Falcon 9 there as she heads downrange into the south from Vandenberg with 50 Starlink satellites on board. You can see that plume starting to expand as Falcon 9 is climbing into the upper reaches of the atmosphere, and you can see Pauline's tracking camera here
I
to
love
the
it. That
side.
side
Look
view,
at that
it's
side
so
view.
great.
Look at that.
So, am
You
I
know-
imagining this? It looks like like you can see that Falcon is tipped sort of
So
up a little bit from the direction of the plume. You get what I'm seeing there?
I do. This is an optical illusion to an effect.
Okay.
And you can see this. So it depends on viewing angles to a lot of extent. You could see this quite a bit from the Cape with some other rockets, where it would look like they weren't quite flying. Exactly what you were saying, Stephen, where it looked like it was pitched up just a little bit. You could see that a lot with the shuttle, but it's just an optical illusion from the camera.
Okay.
And here we go with stage shutdown. And there you can see the second stage engine lit as the first stage pulses its thrusters. The first stage not performing a return to launch site today, but instead heading about 630 kilometers downrange to the Of Course I Still Love You autonomous spaceport drone ship, which will catch it and then return it to the port of Los Angeles for refurbishment. But you can see there, oh, you can even make out the two payload fairings.
Yep.
Look, you can make out the two payload fairings flipping in the upper atmosphere. That is so cool. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, so if you're looking at the screen, the brighter dot in the center is the second stage Merlin vacuum engine, and the fainter dot that sort of pulses from time to time is the first stage booster on its way to Of Course I Still Love You.
I'm just staying with this. I mean, as long as they
Yeah.
have it on the camera, I'm
Oh, it
staying
is.
with this. It's a little dot in the sky.
I mean, it's absolutely incredible here. As they continue, the second stage right now is at 115 kilometers in altitude. The first stage is right behind it at 113 right now, and of course those will really start to diverge here as the second stage continues to power on into orbit. But look at the views from that booster too. Really cool shots of some of the islands off the coast of Southern California there. You know, and it's worth noting too, you know, we talk a lot about Starlink for home internet use and things like that, but it is very much worth mentioning the other applications that the technology has. You know, we saw last year as it was all coming online how much first responders to natural disasters in the US and Canada were utilizing it for those sort of real-time communications. And it very much worth noting that Starlink was one of the, you know, put in place solutions for restoring communications with the nation of Tonga after the volcanic eruption there last month. So, you know, multifaceted uses for this particular kind of space-based internet technology. Oh, look at that camera
Yeah.
inside of the inner stage there on the first stage booster.
Very cool view. Yeah, and you can see you see Falcon 9 booster 1063 is doing little puffs with its cold gas thrusters to make sure it's in the right orientation when it starts to touch the atmosphere, and then we'll come up on the re-entry burn, and you'll see it kind of kick sideways whenever that happens, and that's all intentional. And the re-entry burn, just for anybody that might be new to the Falcon 9, it is to slow it down as it's reaching the atmosphere and also protect it. It pushes that shock wave out in front of it. As the engines are firing, it pushes the shockwave out in front and protects the booster as it's falling into the atmosphere.
Indeed. And you can kind of see there as you were talking, Stephen, it really completed the reorientation maneuver into the attitude that it needs to be in there for that entry burn, that three engine entry burn, which will be coming up here in just a few seconds as the booster descends down below 70 kilometers here.
Yep. And watch for the center engine to start, and then you'll see two of the outer engines start shortly after. And then they'll shut down the two outer ones and then shut the center engine down last.
Indeed, and again on the right-hand side, and there's that burn beginning, and then you can also see on the other side of your screen the second stage continuing to take the payloads into orbit here today. You know, and it is worth mentioning, watching this entry burn complete here, how just a couple of years ago, how new and novel this was to watch. And now, I mean, watching it, it's nice to also see the repetitiveness of the successes, you know, and how many they've been able to recover as they have really honed that process a lot. And of course, a lot of transferable knowledge there to the planned landing system for Starship as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It really hasn't stopped being surreal to me that they can pinpoint a landing on like a postage stamp sized landing pad out in the ocean. It's absolutely amazing to me. Even though it's like you said, it's routine. They've done it so many times now. It's practically boring, even though it's so not the second you actually start to think about it. It's just absolutely high technology, a feat of human ingenuity. I mean, I could blather on because I'm sleep deprived, but seriously, super cool that they can do that. I love drone ship landings.
Well, and some of these views that we get from the onboard cameras too, like where you can just look down at Baja, California, you know, as the stage continues its way onto orbit. And here we go for the landing. We have acquisition of signal on Of Course I Still Love You. So here we go as the booster is descending.
Shaking.
It is. It's close.
Now you know it's coming.
Somebody may be firing a rocket engine near it. Pixels.
And losing signal is pretty standard at this point.
Yeah.
And then we wait to see if we see a booster on the deck here in just a moment.
The old suddenly rocket, if anybody remembers that.
Yeah. There it is.
And there it is. And almost,
Awesome.
and look at that. Look at how center that is. Awesome stuff.
Wow.
So booster 1063 has leveled up to 1063-5 because the boosters actually receive their new number designation upon landing. But this is the view I really want to show, because you can see the small dogleg maneuver here that the second stage had to do, because you can see the first stage just continued on that straight ballistic trajectory to the drone ship. So the fact that the second stage's ground track line is different is that visual representation of the dogleg to avoid some of the populated areas of Southern California in that initial climb here.
Yeah,
But
and I wanted to point out that, you know, we're talking about how regular the landings have become, but I will say, and I think Chris can attest to this as well, when we're out at the press site and we've just, you know, the rocket is out of sight and everything, we still have our ear to the ground to find out if the booster is landing. You know, it's not, you know, like planes, you know, take off and land every day and you don't think too much about it. I know a lot of people do. I know Jack would probably take issue with that statement, but we still are very interested. Every single Falcon 9 launch, did the booster land? We always want to know.
I take issue with that statement.
Hey, I have to do the thing. I have to do the thing real quick.
Yep,
Okay.
go for it.
There it is.
There we go.
Yeah. You want to explain it, Das?
It's a launch pad that doesn't have a rocket on it anymore because we just got to see another rocket launch. Truly, we are living in wondrous times.
Indeed, because like there was a rocket launch earlier this week from Florida. There was this we had the Rock test flight yesterday, and now we've had Starlink here today. And then, you know, hey, we're all over here in Florida gearing up for the next flight out of here on March 1st with a weather satellite. So on an Atlas V. So it is certainly all go here in the month of February. 100%. I wanted to hit one real quick thing about the mission timeline, and then I know there's a couple more questions and some super chats we want to get to here too. So this particular Starlink mission, it is targeting the higher deployment altitude of 300. Okay, hang on. It is targeting the higher deployment altitude of 306 by 316 kilometers in the 53.2-degree inclination orbit. We are now in a prolonged coast phase, and at T plus 53 minutes 39 seconds, the second stage engine will reignite for a single-second burst to finalize the orbit. And once they have that, an hour and 2 minutes after launch is when we are expecting Starlink satellite separation. So a little bit different flight profile here than what we've also seen in the past and seen from the Cape in terms of how they're sort of adjusting to that and what they need to do when you launch from Vandenberg as well. So that is what we have coming up in the mission.
Check out what Pauline has found for us real quick.
Oh, yes, please do. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah.
Little
It's
day
almost
moon for you.
tough to see that up in the sky because it is only partially illuminated and it's bright out there. But a
Our
live view of the
soon-to-be
moon.
destination.
There
I
you
think
go.
there's a moon rocket that might be moving to the pad here soon as well, Das.
Oh, jeez. That's a thing,
Right.
isn't it? Just
It
nobody
isn't-
say the date.
It is indeed. You know, it's an interesting date.
If
To
you
say
say
the
it, it'll
least.
hear you and it won't actually roll. So
Exactly. But things are definitely coming together for the Artemis program and everything. And just in case you did miss it, NASA did announce yesterday that the current plan is to roll SLS to the launch pad starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on March 17th. It's about an 11-hour roll. So that would mean if all goes correct, she would be at the pad at 5 a.m. Eastern the following day. So, and that kicks off a multi-week wet dress rehearsal with teams being able to practice the countdowns, actually fuel the vehicle to really take Pad B through all of its paces. But that is a very cool milestone coming up. And SLS, of course, the vehicle that will be launching the crew to the SpaceX Starship lunar lander that will actually take them to the surface. So, germane to a SpaceX conversation.
And from a photography standpoint, if they start rolling out at 6, that means it's going to be out there during golden hour, during sunset, and beyond. But that's going to be really good for photos.
It very well could be.
It's going to be
Indeed.
beautiful.
But back
All
to
right.
this particular mission, there were just a couple more questions, really good ones too. Actually, both from David and Daniel here. David wanting to know, do we know how many flights the Merlin engines are good for? We know the boosters can be used 10 plus times, but how often do they fly with their original engines? They fly quite often with their original engines, but the engines can also sort of be plug and played with them. So if they need to pull engines for refurbishment, they can, and they can swap them in and out. I do not believe Elon has ever said how many flights the Merlins were actually designed for, but the Falcon 9 itself was designed for 10 flights, have a look at it to make sure it's good, 10 flights, have a look at it to make sure it's good, upwards to about 100 per booster is what the goal was. So if you're designing the booster with that many potential flights in mind, odds are the engines, the most expensive component, you have also designed to in some sort of similar scale.
Yeah, we've never gotten official word on if and when they swap those engines out. And then the other question that we have waiting here, Daniel asking how many more launches of these version 1.5 satellites are expected before they need to switch to version 2.0?
That's a really good question, which I don't think they have said specifically when they plan the switch to version 2.0. We know they've been throwing the 1.5s up into Shell 4, which is what this launch in particular went into here today. But in terms of when we'll see the exact switchover for the V2.0s, they have not exactly said yet.
All right. And we do have a few more super chats that we could roll through. Musical Wolves asked a little bit ago, how close is the hangar to the pad? I mean, that might have been more appropriate to ask right before launch, but it is an interesting question.
It is right there. It is very much literally right there, very akin to the horizontal integration facilities at 39A and Slick 40 over here at the Cape, where they are literally right there. Very specifically to this one. So it takes about a 45-degree turn to the right. So this is a linear distance, not a travel distance, but it is 270 meters or 888 feet linearly from the launch mount.
Not far.
Not far. No.
Yeah, I'm sure it gets covered in, even though the flame trench is not pointed towards the hangar, but I'm sure some of that exhaust plume clouds around it during a launch.
It can, but thankfully there's not a lot of toxic stuff in the kerosene oxygen
Mix, yeah.
mix, exactly.
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Steven. Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
yeah. Well, and then just to get Musical Wolves left another one. Did the invisible towers launch the fog away? that's good. Thank you,
Yes,
Musical Wolves.
Very grateful it was a clear day and not a fog day in Vandenberg.
Right.
For Jack's sake.
And
all
then
our sake.
Arthur Hicken wanting to know what's the approximate expected return time for the booster to port. Now, typically, this would be a question for Gav, but I can just say generally, it's usually between 3 and 5 days. As we saw just a little bit ago, Booster 1058 returned just now from a mission that was launched on Monday, and but we've seen them return in as little as 3 days. It all depends on how far down range it is and what sort of sea states they're dealing with to get home. They would rather station keep if they know that where they are is safe than try to go through some rough seas if they predict that it's going to be rough on the way home. So sometimes they'll kind of hang out there, and it also depends how quickly can they get the booster secured and actually get ready to head back to port. So it does kind of depend. Go ahead, Jack.
If that's the Arthur Hicken I know, what's up, Arthur? And I know why they're asking, because they want to go down to the port of LA and photograph the booster. That's cool. I think I met Arthur like way back, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago now, down at the port of LA before they moved where they process boosters from. So if you haven't had a chance to go down there yet, Arthur, at the new spot, oh man, give it a try. But and also thanks for the support.
Yeah, so keep your eyes peeled. We will have more information on that once they get underway. And then, of course, we've got Ivan over here. Thank you for becoming a PadRat member, and we've said it already on the stream, but a lot of this stuff that we do, we could not do without our members. So thank you very much. And of course, if you become a member at the Capcom level, I believe it is, you get access to our special Discord, where you can hang out with lots of other rocket nerds like yourself, and there's lots to learn, lots of fun to have over there, and you also get first dibs on some behind the scenes things. Sometimes I think even some of our members have seen some photos from our recent Cape flyover, so that is a definite bonus for becoming a member.
Flyover,
Indeed
Steve.
it is.
Yeah, Cape flyover.
Flyovers. Tell me more.
Well, let me tell you. Keep your eyes peeled, because we are planning to release this video in hopefully the next couple hours. Just keep your eyes peeled. You should get a notification when it goes live, and it's going to have all kinds of cool stuff in there, because we're hoping to do this weekly now, where we're going to fly over the Cape, take a nice long flight. It's kind of cool because we're able to sort of tell the pilot what we want to see, where we want to go, and document what has changed. Now, we put out our video last week, and then this week, Julia and I took another flight, And of course, fingers crossed that things would change enough to make it worthwhile. And lo and behold, they did. There is some exciting stuff in there. We can't wait for you to see it. And it's just really cool to see the Cape from this perspective, flying around. We've got video, we've got still photos. They're great videos. Brady has been working on the edit, and we've got Hagen was doing a voiceover, and the video is just about ready to be published. So keep your ear to the ground on that if you are super excited about all the stuff. We've got not just SpaceX, of course. We've got Roberts Road, we've got 39A, all Starship-related stuff. We've got Blue Origin, I believe in there. We've got Relativity is developing out here. We've got all kinds of stuff in these flyover videos. So do not miss them, because if y'all are interested, that means I get to continue to fly.
But also really cool to see all this development that is happening at the Cape, and this type of forward expansion, because it's very worth noting that the Kennedy Space Center area was built exactly for these types of large rockets. In fact, pads 39A and B were built for vehicles twice the size of the Saturn V rocket, because there was that forethought of build it for what you think you might need. Don't change it later. So, I mean, it's really cool to see that place becoming that sort of evolved spaceport that was in mind in the early 60s and
like
mid-60s.
stepping into its destiny.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And
I got chills. That was good.
I'll be honest, with the first flight last week, I was surprised at how much there was to see. I mean, we knew that, Roberts Road was going to be interesting, but there was so much more to see. SpaceX is not the only entity out there that's developing things. So there's lots to see, and the reason we do these flyovers is because we can't just, it's not like Starbase where we can just roll up there on the ground with a camera on a tripod and get footage anytime we want. So we have to plan this ahead of time, take the flight, and really we're going in sort of blind, like we know sort of areas to hit, and we know that there's interesting things happening out there, but we don't have the ability to know. So it's always a surprise every time we go up to see what sort of new developments are happening. And we were surprised this time. There is so much going on.
So definitely keep a lookout for that video, which will be coming shortly. Yes. Indeed.
And then let's see, we've got a couple, literally like two more right here. Ryan Hamstra saying, me and my family are headed to Florida for the GOES and Starlink Thursday. Can't wait to see my first launch in person. That is
nice.
awesome. So you're going to get to see two launches while you're here. That is, I mean, one launch is awesome, but if you can see two, and that's, sorry, Jack, but that is what makes the East Coast the best coast. It doesn't rhyme, but it is true.
The only thing that rhymes is the East Coast is the least coast. So I don't know if you want to go rhyming.
Yikes!
No. But Mash, I just want to.
Thank you for that, Doss. I don't even need to add anything more.
Give me a drink, Jack.
There we go. Well, to your first launch, enjoy it, and oh wow, an Atlas with 4 solid rocket boosters for your first launch. Enjoy that and prepare for the experience. That's going to be awesome.
And then lastly, we have Matthew Martin just leaving a cool $5 for the team. We appreciate that so much, Matthew. And that is going to clear out our queue. Anybody else have anything else to add?
Just thank you.
Yeah.
Just thank you so much to everyone who joined us today for this mission and came out to share a launch with us. Thank you especially to our members, to anyone who gave a super chat, and also to all of you who just watched an advertisement. It all helps us, so thank you so much for sharing this interest with us and
Hit the
coming
like
along
button,
the ride.
subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss the KSC flyover video, and West Coast. Bye.
And at the 11th hour, Douglas Mason got in there becoming a red team member. Thank you, Douglas.
Excellent. Well, I do believe that's going to bring us up to the end of our coverage. We're looking across the Lompoc Valley here at the Space Force Base, actually two of the launch pads for the Space Force Base there. You can still see the SpaceX Strongback leaning over a little bit, sort of doing its very best Pisa impression, and then that Atlas pad out there as well. It just looks cool to see the pads out there in the rolling hill / edge of the mountain terrain, but that is going to do it for our coverage today, isn't it, y'all?
Yeah.
I
Thanks
believe it
everybody
will.
for joining us.
All right. Well, let's run down the list one more time. We had a lot of people involved with the broadcast today. Y'all, we had Pauline Acklin out in the field operating one of our cameras. Actually, this is her camera we're still looking at. Pauline, not on comms, but thank you so much for rolling out to Vandy and doing that awesome jog. I think that was the first time Pauline tracked an active flying rocket with video, if I'm not mistaken, and I was showing her shot most of the time. It was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, fantastic job. Wow,
Yeah.
I did not know that was her first time doing that, but yeah, great tracking shots there. From
All
Jack
right.
and Pauline, great tracking shots.
I hope I read that right. I think I did read that right. Let me see. First ever rocket track. Yeah, okay, cool. I think I read it right. So let's see here. We also had out in the field Mr. Jack Bayer. Jack Bayer. Why did I just say Bayer? I have no clue. Anyways, Jack.
Well, it's like we're back doing a Starship stream 2 years ago, all over again or something. Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks everybody that watched the Stratolaunch test flight yesterday. And oh, hey, Steven, you know what also makes West Coast best coast? Terrain. It's not just flat. Look at the rolling hills after the previously mentioned rolling hills. Anyways, thanks
Yeah, but
everybody
we
for
have
watching.
alligators.
Well,
Bye.
also, sorry, Christopher, thank you for becoming a launch director. Thank you so much
Wow,
for that
thank you.
continuing support. And Arthur, Hicken, and Charm for becoming a Padrat and Red Team member. Thank you so much for that ongoing support. That really means a lot to us.
Some door hangers there. We appreciate the support there, y'all. Back on the commentary, of course, you just heard Mr. Chris Gebhardt. Chris, thank you so much, as always, for helping with the Q&A there, doing the Q&A.
Indeed, my pleasure. Lots of great questions, as always, from our community here today.
Excellent. And also Mr. Stephen Marr, who lives in helicopters now.
Yes, I wish I could. Yeah, I can't say enough how excited I am for everybody to see these flyover videos. So keep your eyes peeled, y'all.
Absolutely. Like and subscribe, etc., etc., if you want to catch up with those. Hey, also, in the back end today, Michael Baylor was helping out with some technical stuff. Michael is basically always here in the background doing some work. A lot of our cool stuff works because of the tireless hours that Michael puts in, slaving away over a hot keyboard, grinding out free-range artisanal code. So, Michael, thank you so much for everything you do. And then last but not least, I think I got everybody. Look through the list. Yes, okay, good. I can say my own name now. I am John Galloway for NASA Spaceflight. You may know me as DOS if you're watching over on Twitch, but we'll be signing off again. Still that Falcon 9, well, Falcon 9's on the drone ship. That second stage continues onto orbit as it is standing by to separate those 50 Starlink satellites. Be on the lookout on Twitter because the mission's not complete until we get payload separation. But the live stream coverage is going to go ahead and end now, and we will see you nerds later. Thank you so much for watching.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
The chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger roll, Atlantic.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight sound speed off. Bring in SCE off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.